Good morning, guys. Welcome back to the Car Compulsion YouTube channel. Really interesting video for you today. I'm going out to meet with a guy called Mike who has a Porsche Cayman GTS. Now, it's a 2020 car, but it's the 2.5 flat 4 car that's received rave reviews. I'm really excited about taking it out for a drive and even more excited about comparing it to the M2 Comp. Let's get into it. And here is that 718 Cayman GTS in a lovely gentian blue. Absolutely stunning car. Been chatting to the guy. He's had the car now for probably around a couple of months. Colour really stands out. Unfortunately, we had a phenomenally good day yesterday with sunshine, and today it's actually been drizzling this morning. If I was giving a definition to the two, I would say that there we have a regal and rapid greyhound, and over here we have a angry little bulldog. As you set off in the car, you immediately hear the engine sitting behind you for a mid-engine car. Sounds brilliant. There is a few, and I was chatting to Mike about this a minute ago. Some people don't like the sound of the GTS's 2.5 4-pot. Mike's actually disabled the sound indicator in the car, so actually the artificial sound is no longer pumped into the cabin. You can ultimately hear the engine behind you, but it's not intrusive. And it just makes you feel like you've stepped into a really sporty and exceptionally well placed car. So as mentioned a couple of times, this has the 2.5 litre flat 4. It's a fairly punchy engine. I've been driving the car now for just a matter of minutes, and I can already tell that it really wants you to work it. It isn't intrusively, you know, noisy, and there probably could be a little bit more sound, and it certainly doesn't have the same sound that you would find in the old variant of the Cayman, and I'm sure it probably doesn't have the same sound that you would find in the new 4 litre naturally aspirated Cayman, but it's still a pleasant sound, and it still is really nice when you're giving the car some throttle. This car, obviously, as mentioned, has the Sport Chrono package. It also comes with a limited slip differential on the back, and it actually also has Porsche's torque vectoring technology. Obviously, in comparison to the M2 competition, the car has a much sort of lower centre of gravity. You do feel much closer to the road. Looking over the bonnet, and you can also see the great big sort of winged pieces of the bonnet there where the lights sit. You do feel much more like you are sitting in obviously a racing type spec car. Heading out onto these roads as well, I noticed one thing that is exceptionally good is the ride quality. It is handling the bumps and the imperfections in the road with absolute ease. The chassis are sublime, quite frankly, so far. Moving into a piece of road now with a little bit more of an acceptable speed limit, you can immediately see that, you know, I'm taking these corners, and having never driven one of these for an immense period of time, I feel comfortable and very, you know, I feel very secure in the fact that the car is going to support me in the choices that I make. Basically, it's got exceptional control. The chassis are sublime, as mentioned earlier. Even heading over these bumps, you feel completely in control. The steering it's just not unsettled by anything. We're heading down this road now at about 60 miles an hour. The corners it's just lapping up the corners. You know, the braking is absolutely brilliant. You know, heading into that corner, no concern whatsoever. Hugging the corner, no issues. It is absolutely brilliant fun. Another thing worth mentioning is the car is very comfortable, not just from you know, the ability to iron out the comfort and or the imperfections in the road, but the seats are impressive. This actually has the 18-way seats. It's an extra, I think it's around a £2,000 extra, but in my opinion, of having just adjusted them and moved around in them, it's probably worth every penny. You know, as opposed to the manual seats. They're supportive, they're comfortable, they're hugging, but not too hugging. There's a really good proportion of lumbar support in the back that you can adjust, and from someone that suffers with a bit of a bad back, I'm finding this an immensely comfortable place to be. I can see it being a real gem on long road trips. One thing I really love about my time in the Cayman GTS so far is the way that everything is positioned in this cabin. Obviously it's a very small place to be in comparison to the M2 Comp and other cars that are not a two-seater sports car, but it's got the traditional setup that every sports car should have. Everything around you is within easy reach, everything is obtainable, everything you really need again is just, you don't have to compromise your driving experience to do things that you need to in the car. And I think that's a really, really excellent thing. So sitting in the Cayman GTS, you immediately notice that it's fantastic quality, and it feels like a really, really traditional sports car. Everything inside is immaculate. There isn't a stitch out of place. Everything in here is very conveniently located, but also very luxurious. I wanted to take a minute to just show you, when we've parked up, what this car looks like on the inside. And in my video a second ago, I mentioned the steering wheel and how lovely it is. And here it gives you an indication of why it looks so great. The exposed metal there with the screws just makes it look really good. And as mentioned, it's really, really thin and really solid. You've got a lovely display there with the Cayman GTS piece in there. You've got your sport chrono clock up the top there. In the center here, obviously, is your infotainment system. And then you've got your buttons here for your sports exhaust, Bose sound system as well. But inside, it's just exceptionally well made. And sitting here looking at this on a daily basis could be something that you could really get used to. So you joined me back in the M2 competition. Mike has now departed after a very fun couple of hours of filming and chatting. Want to say big thanks to Mike for letting me, borrow to utilise his Cayman GTS that he's only had for a very short time to have a go in it, and it was a really, really pleasurable experience. I'm going to take the M2 out now. First impressions is it feels like I've just got into a tank. One of the immediate things I noticed between the two cars is the M2 does feel more raw. It definitely feels more alive at times than the Porsche does. The Porsche does a brilliant job of everything it's doing, whether you're cornering, whether it's the gear changes, the ratios, whether it kind of feels like it understands you more than the M2 competition does. And I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a positive thing all the time. The M2 comp does feel more raw. It does feel like more of a handful. Stretch of country roads that I've just done on the Porsche, you can tell already that the car is much more unsettled. The springs are a lot firmer, but it doesn't feel a bad unsettled. There's no getting around the fact that the car doesn't corner as well as the Porsche, it doesn't hug the road as well as the Porsche, but it doesn't do a bad job. It just requires more of you. It requires more of your concentration when you're in the M2 comp. And some people are going to thrive off that. It is a driver's car, and it does make you really focus on what you're doing. And I felt the Porsche, whilst very good in a driver's capability, did offer quite a lot of safety, and it felt like a bit of a comfort blanket. And that's not me indicating the Porsche is bad at what it does. It's got God knows how many years of German sports car evolution behind it. But the M2 comp, it just... And the Porsche, well, it didn't do that. I think it's a pretty simplistic question. I mean, living with this and then spending some time with that, it's really a case of, do you need 4 seats and do you need more boot space? The M2 comp's engine and throttle delivers power in a different way to the Porsche. I would say, and I know there's not much love out there for the sound of the M2 comp's engine and its sound in general, depending where you are in the world, of course. I would say that it probably sounds a little better than the Porsche is, and I would say that's a reasonably accurate comparison. I think that it's probably a little bit more aggressive with its power delivery, lower in the rev range, and I think that overall I prefer the engine in the M2 competition. So let's summarise. Very difficult comparison because both of these cars serve different purposes, but I'm going to give you my thoughts. Cabin quality, the way that the inside is built, hands down the Porsche is the winner, and this might be expected. Not a stitch out of place, luxurious, really well put together, and just a really, really brilliant place to be. Engine-wise, the BMW M2 Competition stole the show for me. I thought that 3-litre straight-six twin-turbo M engine was more characterful, had more low-down grunt, and was just generally a better performer than the 2.5 4-pot turbocharged engine in this variant of the Cayman GTS. Steering and handling, the Porsche stole the show. Probably expected. The way the car's set up with that mid-engine, the way the chassis are tweaked, the way the steering works in all of the different modes, the way it irons out the imperfections in the road, the way it's not unsettled, and the way it hugs the corners, only a Porsche can do. It really was much better than the BMW M2 Competition on that front. Which one's fastest? Very, very difficult to compare because they both felt equally as fast in different settings. If I had to nitpick, I'd say that the extra torque in the BMW M2 Competition does give you a little bit more shove back in the seat, but they really did feel as quick as each other in real-world driving conditions 95% of the time. From a price point perspective, the M2 Competition offers more bang for buck. Out in the market at the minute, if you compare similar cars, similar mileage, and the Porsche with a little bit of spec, you're looking at about anywhere between a £7,000 to a £9,000 difference in the cost of the car used. Do I think the Porsche is worth it though if you're in the market for a two-seater? Without a doubt. Would I swap my M2 Competition for one immediately? The answer is no, and that's simply because I think that there are some real similarities and closeness, and I also think that the M2 Competition has quite a lot of fun factor. However, if I didn't own the M2 Competition and I was in the market for a car in that sort of price bracket and I didn't require the 4 seats of the M2 Competition, I wouldn't choose it over the Porsche. I would absolutely buy the Porsche any day of the week if I was in that situation. So this was my first video driving someone else's car, and a significantly expensive one as well. So a big thank you to Mike for allowing me to do that. He was a massive help, really supportive, and a great guy to be around. I hope everybody else enjoyed the video. It was brilliant fun, and I look forward to comparing more cars in the future. I actually have a GT4 I'm going to compare to the M2 Competition. I think we all know it's a bit of a foregone conclusion, that one, but it's going to be fun to do nonetheless. Please like and subscribe to hear more content, and thanks again for watching.